The Angry Chicken Hearthstone podcast is produced by amove.tv. Check out amove TV for more podcasts covering Blizzard games. For more of Jocelyn's gaming podcasts, visit jossplays.com. And to find many more podcasts with Ridiculous Hat, follow @RidiculousHat on Twitter. Every episode of Tech is made possible thanks to our legendary patrons over at patreon.com/TAC.
Time's up. Let's do this.
Legendary!
You face Jaraxxus. You smell like a leper gnome. I knew it. So hot.
A podcast about Hearthstone and Battlegrounds. This is The Angry Chicken!
Greetings and welcome back, everyone. This is indeed The Angry Chicken. I'm Garrett Weinzierl here, as always, with Ridiculous Hat. Jocelyn is out today. School stuff, I believe? I think it's school stuff.
Yes. Not health stuff.
Not health
Health
stuff.
good.
Totally fine.
School
just
stuff.
super busy. So, we wish her good grades.
She wrote a list of all the things she has to do today, and I'm just tired about halfway through the sentence. So, Joss, good luck with all that stuff.
Yeah. I've got a nice little break from my school stuff this week. So next week I'll send you another tiring sentence. How's that sound, Hat? How's that sound?
Exhausting.
Did I tell you I'm taking a podcast class this semester?
I think you mentioned it, but you can tell me more stories because this tickles me.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
tickled.
I needed an elective, and the options were limited, and I figured, well, worst case scenario, I hate it, but it is what it is. Sometimes you hate classes you take. But I figured, best case scenario, I feel like I'm back in art school with a bunch of fellow creatives, and I'll get to see what people who, haven't been doing it for too long and are jaded to overthink every single thing that they do before they even press record now, what they do. See people with fresh eyes or ears create podcasts.
Well, you don't see people with ears.
You know what I mean.
I do. I'm being difficult for a bit.
Damn it, Hat, I'm a podcaster.
Take that to your
not a
podcast
linguist.
class. Take it to your class. Do that.
Take it to my podcast
be the
class and
person.
say, one of the things I can't stand about working with co-hosts is when they make things difficult for a bit, and then I'll play this clip.
I helped you with your homework. There you go.
Thank you, Hat. I have yet to have homework that includes rate your co-host because you're already making podcasts. I think the class assumes you don't already make podcasts, but if that comes up, I now know what to do. Someone please clip this and remind me of it for when it comes up later.
I also vaguely remember you saying your biggest fear with this class was actually saying, "No, you fool, you're doing it all wrong" to the teacher, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that was more of a joke concern. That was still somewhat true because, if you end up in a class of a thing you've done for a while, you do kind of worry. It's like, am I gonna have to fight to not be an ass? Is that gonna be?
Are you going to be like, "Excuse me, hi, I'm Garrett from CreateCon," and they'll be like, "Whoa."
We did have to introduce ourselves, and we were instructed to explain our familiarity with podcasting. And I was just like, right, here we go.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
You made a website to keep track of all your podcasts.
Which, by the way, you need to do that.
Make a website.
This is not a bit. This is a segment
Oh, yeah.
called Garrett Tells Hat to please make a single website, if for no other reason than to make our outro a little more brief.
That's why I link my Twitter. It's all in the header thing. But I guess I could websites are cheap.
Listen, Hat, I will go buy you ridiculoushat.com right now.
Okay.
Or
Gonna make
.org.
for
It's
awkward.
$15 limit. $15 limit. If someone already has Ridiculous
Okay.
Hat and they want $500 for it, I'm not offering to do that. But
That would be awkward audio content. So I'll just write it down. We'll assume that it gets done, and then you can continue with the show.
delightful. Anyways, we've got some news for you today, and then we've got a whole lot of Q&A. We're even going to try and make some time for you lovely folks hanging out in the chat room to do some Q&A with us because mercifully it's a quieter week here in Hearthstone. So Before we get into all of that, though, we do want to thank those of you supporting us over at patreon.com/TAC. That is where you can go and support the Angry Chicken. It's completely opt-in, but you can support us with $1 or more right over there at patreon.com/TAC and help us pay the bills. And this week, Hat, I am not going to apologize because this was a specific request by one of our new patrons. They really like a certain thing that I do to hype things up and maybe make your ears hurt because one of our new patrons is named Steak! Okay, that's enough. Steak is a new patron and was just like, I love the John Cena intros. Could you do more of them? And I was just thinking to myself, no, I won't, but I'll do one for you, Steak, since you asked.
I had my finger on the button of my own John Cena soundbite, but you got me covered.
Oh, nice. Yes, it's wondrous. Also, Kellen P. Thank you very much for becoming a patron. And as always,
Wait, hold on. We need to play them. It can't just do one patron with the sound. Here, I'll do this
Steak
one.
requested it. Okay.
Kellen.
Oh, nice. Oh, you went a different. I like that. Okay, cool. I thought you were gonna say we should do another John Cena. I'm like, hey, 2 back to back.
No.
But that's wonderful.
We already seen him.
You can't see him. Which, by the way, I'm seeing Fast 9 this weekend. It's going to be pretty weird when I can't see the bad guy in the movie.
Yes. I'm working Fast 9 this weekend. It's going to be pretty weird. My feet hurt.
When your feet hurt?
I work at a movie theater.
Are you going to be standing?
Running between locations. Well, walking quickly, expeditiously. My building has 10 floors.
I thought you were working in another John Cena reference that I was missing, but you were just talking about the actual physical perils of your job.
There's a lot to keep up with here. I know we're moving pretty fast.
We are, and so
and
let's...
furious.
Hey! If I had the Fast and the Furious drop right now, I'd play it. But I do have Hearthstone news to talk about, so I'll play this drop instead.
Good news, everyone!
And when I said it was a quiet week, I meant it because the top news this week is that Celestalon is teasing in-game informing of Nosdormu Day. Celestalon tweeted out that, quote, "We've heard the feedback that Nosdormu Day needs to be in client to be truly successful. Stay tuned." Smiley face. Emoticon. Not even
is
emoji.
That actually the top news item from the past 7 days?
Yes. Yes.
It is.
I have seen more, like, additional websites report on Blyze's rage quit in the last 7 days, but we talked about it last week. So
we did. And they did a small arena balance hotfix where they made the good classes win less and the bad classes win more. Cool. And
there are
Master Sword Dalaran.
There are deeper podcasts for Arena Talk than this one.
Yeah. I haven't played Arena since, gosh, I don't know.
I can't remember either. It's been a very long time for me. Anyways, yeah, there was also Masters Tour Dalaran, which you watched and I saw some people tweet about.
No, I committed to watch it by Thursday for my other show.
And you haven't started yet?
So Masters Tour Dalaran was aired on our local time in East Coast US, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., which is kind of an awkward time. It's mostly aligned with the Asia Pacific time zone because they want to make sure they stagger these in different time zones for different regions because, you know, you don't want the APAC players always playing in the middle of the night, and you don't want the US players always getting the good times or whatever. So EU started around 1 or 2 in the morning and went all night, which was unpleasant for them. America's players started at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and then it started around 9 a.m. Japan Standard Time. So I didn't get to watch much of this live because I was also away visiting my parents this weekend for the first time since Thanksgiving 2019. Pretty exciting to see them. That was cool. But didn't have a ton of time to watch live Hearthstone. So I read tweets about it when I could and all that.
Oh, well, happy Father's Day to Ridiculous Dad.
Yes, exactly. You really wanted to say that, didn't you?
It just popped in my head, and I had to get it out.
You had to say it. It was a ridiculous dad joke. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? So, yeah, it was a very nice Father's Day, but I didn't get a chance to watch a lot of this. However, a lot of my friends were in contention for America's Grandmasters, and they made it. So, for starters, this was an event defined by China region dominance. 3 of the top 4 players were from the CN server. Shuimu, Omega Zero, and Liao. When we've seen all of them do well before, but Shuimu ended up winning, and pretty exciting to see such a strong representation from China. Rekfam in the top 4 from Croatia, a well-known EU grinder. Now we have our GM promotions. Lambie series, you may remember, was in GM last season. Relegated out, back in. Okasensuke, I'm sure I said that incorrectly, and Trihison both made it in Asia Pacific as well. In EU, Bunny Hopper, remember he got relegated. He's back as well, immediately bounced back. Floki, Gabby, and Jayu. And in the US, Ego Waffle, McBannerface, Kayla's Luna, and Dmitry Kazov. This is kind of the class of grinders that had been working cups and Masters Tours and all that for a while, and really great guys, at least. Ego Waffle, McBannerface, and Kayla's I know personally, and they're all well-deserving hard workers. And as far as classes that did well, Shaman was the best performing class. Now, it was not played very much. I don't want to give the impression that everyone brought Shaman, it was crazy good, but in target priest lineups, you had to bring Doomhammer Shaman, and it seems like that did very well for only over a few hundred games, not very many, but in the games it was played, it did very, very well. Warrior was the clear winner and had a ton of people playing it and did well because the general strategy here was there aren't 4 consistent decks that beat Priest, just ban Priest, so there wasn't a lot of Priest played, and because of that, the biggest predator to Warrior is Priest, so people played a ton of Rush Warrior, did very well, had thousands of games. Priest was also above 50%. Druid was the only other class to break even. Every other class was under 50%, except for Shaman, as we mentioned. Paladin, 32% win rate. Again, not a lot of play, but the people that did play it, they weren't winning with it.
So it wasn't some secret that extremely passionate Paladin players were bringing and owning with.
It was a secret Paladin, but no, it was bad.
Oh, well done. Well done.
Thank you.
So that
yeah,
was good
and
even by
again,
your
only
standards.
76 games played, but it didn't beat anything. It was bad against everything. So, kind of unfortunate. But
yes, but also aligning
not unexpected.
with our game at home.
Yeah. Worse than the game at home. It just doesn't fit all that well into a Conquest lineup. So, not surprised to see the performance there. And yeah, it's there were a couple interesting card choices, but not a lot of like secret tech that people had been hiding and working on that really made its debut here. It was the decks we know.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, I was hearing Doomhammer rumblings like day 1 of the mini set going live. And yet I don't see it much on ladder, so I had kind of filed it away in my brain as more of a tournament deck. Do you think that's true? Is it more of a conquest deck specifically?
It's really, really good against Priest. So if you know you're going to play Priest and you want to beat it, it's really good. It scales pretty well at very high brackets of ladder where also you're going to see a lot of Priest. It's got a really rough Hunter matchup, and the Rush Warrior matchup's like okay. The Druid matchup's like not great, so especially Token Druid. So it's really a deck that you're more likely to see in very specific curated fields, whereas Elemental Shaman is much more popular on ladder and has a much more generalized matchup spread that does well overall, but is definitely not a deck that translates all that well to tournaments. So if you're planning on not banning Priest, Doomhammer's the way to go. But in terms of ladder popularity, yeah, you're right. It's just not as common as people going, Vapor into Custodian, into Stormer, or whatever.
We do tend to attract a lot of the priest-hating variety of listeners, though. So, if you get to that kind of frothing at the mouth level of anger, maybe also consider Doomhammer Shaman for your ladder grinding needs.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation right now in pretty much every skill bracket and every Discord that I'm in and all of Twitter of how current Control Priest is causing people to be upset. I don't really get the vitriol, but people are clearly upset about it. So if you want to address that with a big old hammer and hit the priest in the face, you can do that.
I think for me, it is coming from a more emotional place of just, wow, we went like 3 months without 30-minute priest games. Like, I don't care that the archetype is very different. Like, the games just go on forever, and they were doing that not that long ago and over a very long stretch of time. And so I just see priests, and I'm just like, here we go. All right, strap in.
Yeah, like I buy the game length thing, and it does take a while, and they take damage, then they undo the damage. We did an episode about it. I get it, and I get not wanting to be apotheosis, and so just playing a little bit less right now. Like, sure, I don't know, just hit him with a hammer.
Yeah, just don't add apotheosis to Battlegrounds, because that's my safe place right now.
I don't think that will happen.
Could you imagine? We've had this talk. We've talked about how ridiculous adding any sort of life gain or lifesteal especially, to Battlegrounds would be, but still.
Yeah, it would fundamentally break the mode.
Yes. Yeah, it would. But anyways, before we just crack the top of this mailbag and get to a big fat stack of Q&A, we have a sponsor to thank today, and that is Gabby. They are back sponsoring this episode of The Angry Chicken. You should go check them out and start saving on your car and homeowners insurance today by checking them out over at Gabby.com/TAC. Wow, I already blew all of my like car talk at the top of the show talking about I'm going to see Fast 9 this weekend. And it would probably be in bad taste to say, after seeing a Fast movie, I tend to, exit the parking lot a little quicker. But still under the speed limit because I'm a law-abiding citizen. Hat. This is bad.
This is quite the segue.
Yes, you know it, everybody. Yes, that's me, Garrett, that person who likes talking Hearthstone, but also likes fitting car analogies into everything ever. You know what I don't like doing? Overpaying for my car insurance. But it's something, I have to have car insurance, have to have it. But luckily, Gabby can help me and you with that. They can also help you with your homeowners insurance. Gabby is the one true comparison platform with fast, verifiable quotes. They are not ballpark guesses, and you can use your current policy to find a better policy. Gabby will compare your current coverage with 40 of the top insurance providers like Progressive, Nationwide, and Travelers. And again, it's all in one place over at Gabby.com/TAC. I did this. I went and logged in with my Geico account over at Gabby.com/TAC, and it automatically just started popping up offers from all sorts of different providers, and it was like apples to apples. It was like, okay, we know what you have in your coverage. Here are ways to save money with the exact same coverage. And it turned out Safeco would save me $218 on the exact same coverage that I had. Anyways, you can do this too. You can put your policy to the test like I did. You can get a better insurance with Gabby. It's totally free to check, and there's no obligation. So go to Gabby.com/TAC. That is spelled GABI.com/TAC. We thank Gabby for their support. We thank everyone listening for going to Gabby.com/TAC and checking them out. And now, let's take some questions. And a reminder to you fine folks out there, I'm sure you've heard at least one other episode of The Angry Chicken. If you haven't, welcome, newcomers. But if you want to be a part of the show, you got a question for us, write in tacpodcast@gmail.com. Those patrons I mentioned earlier, you can message us right there in Discord, which a ton of you did. A lot of more of today came from the patron Discord than anywhere else. But why don't you kick us off today, Hat?
I will. All right. Do we bumper here? So what do we do?
Well, we don't need to. We can just get into it. Do you want?
Just get into it. All right.
Do you want a bumper?
No, I'll read it. I'll do the thing. All right. So James W. sent in, emailed early into the mini set's release telling Garrett that it seems like Elemental Shaman might actually be good. You mentioned on the last show that while excited about the prospect for Elemental Shaman, you didn't think it was playable just yet. Still early since the Wailing Caverns release, so I could be proven wrong, but I played quite a few games with Nelly Shaman deck and won everything so far. For context, I'm sitting at Silver 2, so maybe the real test is yet to come. Regardless, I love the additional card draw and tools at my disposal while playing this deck and have had a great time with it so far. We're glad to hear that. Along the same line, another listener, BJ, asks, now that Elemental Shaman is finally kicking butt up and down the ladder, what other decks do you guys want to see taking off? Do they need much tweaking from where they are now? Will Pirates ever be great in any version of the game? Oh boy, there's a lot of questions here. Where do you want to start, Garrett?
Ooh, Pirates have been great.
They've been too great.
Far too great.
The Pirates,
and they've been varying
and
levels
small-time Buccaneer.
Yeah, and they've been varying levels of great over a long period of time. So historically speaking, I'm not picking up what you're laying down on the pirate side of things, BJ. They may be suffering from a little bit of scurvy at the moment, but I'm sure it won't be that long until they've had their vitamin C and are back to completely destroy us. And yes.
Well, okay, hold on a second. I think I see where BJ is coming from because Garrett, I just looked it up, and Small Time Buccaneer was nerfed 4 years and 4 months ago. So maybe people that started playing in the last 4 years might not have realized that they printed a neutral flame imp that had a pirate tag.
Yeah, okay. That was that and who was the charge dude?
Patches.
Patches. That and Patches were the top of the pirate Mount Everest. That's as good as they've ever been. But there's been ever since Ankar, we've had like
Oh, we did have Ankar and Risky Skipper.
That was within the last year, man. Like
it was, and Skipper was like a full year.
Yes, yeah. So Warrior has been keeping the pirate dream alive in very recent Hearthstone history.
Sword Eater's good now.
Yes.
You can Watley into Sword Eater.
It's not like a full pirate deck though. So, in that way I get where BJ's coming from, but Ankar, it was a pirate package that you ran, last year, right? Yes.
Yeah. And Pirate Warrior is still very good in Wild. They added a new pirate as of the release of Forge and the Barons, Rokara. She's not actually a pirate, but she has a lot of R's in her name, so it fits. And she's also incredibly powerful in that deck.
Yes, she is. But I'd rather focus on what didn't land this expansion or even this mini set that we all of those times we said maybe it's coming in a future expansion. What are you really hoping gets powerful enough to be a real ladder grinding archetype in a future expansion?
So we talked about a few of these. We haven't even talked about Elemental Shaman yet. This question's about Elemental Shaman. We're working backwards. It's like Memento.
I just wanted to give a shout out to that person because they wrote in, I think it was day 1 of Wailing Caverns, and they were like, hey, seems pretty good. And I just wanted to shout out to James because they were commenting directly on the most recent episode. But yeah, this is more about BJ's question.
Yes, but James was right. Elemental Shaman is good.
Yeah, it was mostly just a good excuse, and thank you for not taking the bait to dump on me for being wrong as hell.
Oh, well, no, the listeners will do that. Yes. And I don't know. Our job as content creators is to be wrong on camera because that is content. That is what brings people back to the show, is how wrong can you be? And I've been there a few times. I said that Raza and Anduin would not be good enough together. And I said, you can build your deck and call it Disco Machine Gun if you want to. And turns out that strategy was actually good enough. So, content. Decks that I want to see good. I want to see a priest deck that plays Crimson Clergy on 1 and then wins with it. That, is a minion. Do you know what that card does?
No, I want
to make sure I clarify.
No.
So Crimson Clergy is the 1-mana 1/3 priest card in core that whenever you heal a friendly character, it gets +1 attack. So
okay. Yep. I'm following. I remember this one.
Yeah, I want a minion combat priest deck. Even though I think current priest is actually surprisingly minion combat-y. But I want a deck that's I play this Wailing Vapor equivalent. It's slightly better than a Dire Mole, but worse than a Mana Worm. I want to play this, and then I want to have this in play for a couple turns and hit people with it. I want to do that. So yeah, Stevensville gamers in chat is calling it Zoo Priest, something along those lines. Also, I want Blue Zoo, also known as Frost Mage, which is not Freeze Mage. Also, I want actual Zoo. I just want Zoo and Zoo Associates to be back in the game, where I play 1-mana minions and my deck doesn't have any burn in it and I can kill people. I guess Elemental Shaman's kind of like that, but it's so sequence heavy.
Yeah, I'm with you on Zoo. I miss Zoo, and even the last few times we had a decent ladder Zoo, it had so many poor matchups.
It was too combo-y. And it was all Matron discarding hand and draw a bunch of cards and play a bunch of cheap flush chants. No. I want 16 1-drops in my deck. I want to play a lot of 1-drops. That's just what I want to do. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. We have some decks that are aggressive, but I want more early board stuff. Kind of like what Buff Paladin was doing for a little while there before they nerfed Krabby, but Krabby was too good at 2 mana 1/4 Rush Wind Fury. Um, Something where I just get to play a bunch of board early and then do stuff with that. I do miss that a lot. And they've seeded some archetypes. I'd like to see Taunt Druid in action. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, I'd be down for Taunt Druid. I want Cannon Master Secret Paladin to be a thing.
Ooh.
I was so
okay,
excited for
okay.
Cannon Master, and in the early days before we found out there was no need to run Cannon Master because Sword was just dumb and had 3 durability at the time. Also, first day of school was wildly overpowered. That you just didn't need Cannon Master. You didn't need that. But I would love a Cannon Master and for even this to go really just double down on this deck does 2 things. Let's make it do secrets and tokens and that's it. And just find a way to make that a thing. I want it to be really, really heavy and focused in its theme, but also bring enough of a power level to actually win games on ladder consistently.
Could see that. Yeah, this is like a big army in a box, and then you get your secrets back. I don't know. It's a cool card. I like Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I do too. This is probably so far. We're halfway through 2021, even though we're only into our first expansion. But that's how Hearthstone rolls. This is the most excited I've been for a card that just hasn't really landed with an impact. So, boo-hoo me. Paladin's been tier 1 for like 2 years, basically. But it's where my passion lies. It's my favorite class. That card I feel like was printed for me, and it's just not bringing home the bacon right now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff that's like seems like it should be good enough, but it isn't. And there have been few cards like that over the years that never make it. But I'm hoping that in the middle set that we get enough goodies to really kick it up a notch. Yeah, that's a good answer. I like that. I like that that Smith card and other like just more board based stuff. Because we have some board based stuff right now, but you need to be playing Burn or Rush or Alex, which is kind of both. Or
yeah. Hearthstone's feeling pretty classic at the moment, which we talked about last week. Like the over inclusion of Alex is reminding me of the days of always including Ragnaros or always including Sylvanas. These big bomb legendaries.
Or always including Alex, like other Alex.
Or always, other Alex, yeah. Other Alex though was still pretty specific to the more. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong on this. My gut goes old Alex was still slightly more specific than new Alex.
Yes. Yeah, because it wasn't just unconditional burn all the time. It was much more useful in control matchups because also back then you could set your own health to 15 and that was safe a lot of the time. And now if you do that against most decks, you're like, I'm just gonna die. Like being at 15 is not enough.
Yeah. So those are answers, BJ. Thanks for writing in. Bouncy Knight wants to know, in looking at different decks, why is the same deck not best against all levels of play? I'm assuming this is what is good in bronze is not as good as silver, is not as good in gold, and so on and so forth. When you're using those filters on your HS replays, your vicious syndicates, why do things move around at different levels of play? Bouncy Knight continues. In other words, wouldn't I be best off to craft the best deck in Legend and learn to play consistently? It would seem that this would be the best way to advance the Legend. What am I missing? Let's go about this with the cold and calculated belief that all Bouncy Knight wants to do is get the Legend and win at Legend and not get into, does Bouncy Knight also want to have fun? And does Bouncy Knight also want to create their own decks?
Probably a good idea to sidestep that. But Garrett, I'll ask you a question about something that we're both very passionate about. Automobiles. And by both, I mean specifically just you.
I was about to say, I had no idea you gave a rat's ass.
I don't really. But I have a vague idea. So, let's say there's a drag race, a local drag race, right?
I live 10 minutes away from a drag strip.
Would it make sense for most people to bring a Formula One race car to the drag race?
I actually have no idea. That might actually be good. They run on slicks. I feel like they might actually win.
They might win, but okay. A person that's never driven one before, a drag racer, they go get a Formula One car. and they bring it out there. Is that a good idea? That's not a good idea, right? That's a bad idea.
Probably not. Probably not.
So the idea here is that there's the best deck, period, and I should just play the best deck. And that whatever rank I'm at doesn't matter, just play the best thing. Well, okay, so we talked about Aggro Shaman, Doomhammer Shaman. Really, really great if you're seeing a lot of Priest. What if you're seeing a lot of Hunter? No, it sucks. So if you're at, and I don't even like to think of the ranks as like bronze, silver, gold, whatever. I like to think of the multipliers. Because the multipliers dictate the quality of opponent that you're paired against and what decks you're likely to see. For those that don't know, if you have a star multiplier, you're paired by a hidden matchmaking rating called MMR. It stands for matchmaking rating. That's the MMR. As long as you still have a multiplier above X1, you are paired by MMR. If you don't have a multiplier, you're paired by which ranked bracket you're in. So if you're an X10, you're going to play against other players that are roughly in the X10 bracket. Then when you get to Diamond 5, you'll play against other players in Diamond. When you're X9, you'll do that until Diamond 10, so on and so forth.
When you run out of those bonus stars, you're now getting matched against where you are on the ladder.
Yeah, the rank. So if you're in a rank bracket where you see a ton of Hunter, and I tell you, okay, Aggro Shaman's the best deck, it's not for you. It's not going to perform the same way because what you're seeing isn't the same thing. If I say, well, top 1,000 players say Priest is the best deck, so just play Priest, but you're in an environment where you see a lot more Control Warlock. Well, no, now it's not the best deck anymore. You have to make the choice based on what you're seeing. You have to make the choice based on your personal skill sets, on what you know, and you can't just say, all right, I'm a drag racer. I'm instantly going to start Formula 1 tomorrow. I'm just going to drive the Formula 1 car now to the grocery store, to Publix, where shopping is a pleasure, and just that's my only car now. No. You take the car you have in the garage and you go get groceries. Drive what's right for you at any given moment.
I would like to point out that in this analogy, their car is a spec drag car, which is probably also not the right tool to go get groceries in, but well, it's entertaining, okay, so I'll allow it.
Right. But you use the right tool for the job, and the idea of I have to play what is the best deck for the best players to make the right decision is one that I would recommend people get away from. Because it's all about what is best for me contextually, based on what I know about the decks in the meta, what other decks I'm seeing, what I'm capable of processing right now, how much energy I want to put into this, so on. There's so many factors. You get to play the game your own way, and to just reach Legend. It's a difficult thing to do, but it is not so difficult that you have to do it exactly just one way. You can do Legend your way, as long as you're not setting yourself back and setting yourself up for failure by playing some weirdo homebrew that doesn't have widespread performance. And even then, some people can homebrew their own decks and do just fine all the way up to Legend if the play skill is there.
I would also say, if you're a patient individual, which I am not.
You're patient with some things, not so much with the latter. But you're very patient with producing a lot of podcasts.
You don't hear me when the call ends.
Well,
now everyone's just imagining I'm just like sitting here cussing for no particular reason as I post a blog.
Yeah, I'm in the call with you when you're posting the blog.
Okay,
you're
fine,
not just shouting
fine.
curses.
Boy, all the bits are real difficult today.
They are. Yes.
Yeah, I would say though, like to kind of like have a little bit of fun with Bouncy Nights situation.
What did you say?
I think I said Bouncy Nuts.
I think you did.
I think I did. Anyways, to have a little fun with that and just run with it, I would say, you could play this game and see, like you go over to Vicious Syndicate right now and you go to their power rankings and you start filtering from Platinum all the way to Legend. You're going to notice there's 4 decks that stay there from Platinum all the way to Legend. So you probably have a safe bet in there somewhere with your Face Hunter, your Token Druid, your Elemental Shaman, or your Rush Warrior at the time of recording this. So if you do want to play that game, you can. I've played that game before. I have definitely found decks I like that click and also get wins doing that.
And there's nothing wrong with playing good decks. In fact, you should play good decks. Playing good decks is a good idea. But the idea that the best deck at the very highest level of play should be the best deck everywhere is the part of this that I would challenge. Now, on the other hand, should I play a deck that is consistently performing at all levels of play if I have a competitive goal? Yes. Yes, you should. Yes, that's a great idea. And stick with that deck, and when you have bad games, post replays, and don't tilt swap off of it, and don't say, oh, I just switched decks and then I got my worst matchup that would have been great for the last deck. That means you shouldn't have switched. Should have just stayed on it.
We should start a tilt replay channel in the Discord
We should.
where everyone can just analyze everyone's replays.
Well, it doesn't have to be tilt related. We should post replays because I like watching replays when people win, because one of the most important skills that you can have is assuming that when you win, you also could have played better. Because the assumption that when I win because of my skill and when I lose it's because of variance, that is the path to the dark side. But if you assume that when you win, there was also some variance that went your way, and how could I have played that better, even though I got the result that I wanted, that is the path to improvement. To the light side.
What if Darth Vader was my favorite character growing up?
Well, then a lot of pieces just fell into place.
Only Halloween costume I repeated one year.
It struck back.
Yes. I was stared at when I built my lightsaber at Batu, and I was the only red blade in the room. I felt judged. All right. Do you want to
Someday
get the
they'll
next
all pay
one?
Garrett. It's okay. Yes. Thank you for that question, Bouncy Hat. That was a good one. And also, this is a good one by Floaty Potatoes. Fantastic name. I've noticed a theme over the last few episodes in discussing Standard and the newly released cards as this should get better later in an expansion or two, or when X rotates. Do you have any ideas on how to fix issues like this, or is this just a widely accepted style of content? Garrett, why don't you start here? Why don't you start getting into this one? Because I started the last couple.
Okay. All right. So I want to start with like kind of a meta discussion of pointing this out that this came up over the last few episodes, because I would say, nay, Floaty Potatoes, this has come up over the entire existence of this podcast for the most part. You know, early days when we didn't even know what an adventure and expansion and so on and so forth was even going to look like. That's kind of aside.
Or if rotation existed.
Yeah.
Because it didn't until it did.
It did not. Yeah. But basically, since the dawn of Standard years, we've thrown this around. I would say the one, I don't know how true this is, and it's hard to verify because you'd have to go back through the entire history of this podcast. But to me, I think the earliest repeated mention of this concept of maybe this will be better when more cards get added goes back to Beast Druid. When they started adding Beast after Beast and Beast Synergy after Beast Synergy to Druid, this was what, 4 years ago?
This was TGT, I think it was like 5 years ago.
Oh my
it was
God, yeah.
Wild Waker, Menagerie Warden, which was supposed to break Standard in half, by the way, which
Menagerie
it did
Warden,
until the
I
set
think
came
is
out.
what, yeah, that I think that was the top of the chain lift of Beast Druid will be a thing, the end is nigh, and it just kept not being a thing.
That was Karazhan. That was 2016,
Whoa.
August 11, 2016, which is almost 5 years ago.
Karazhan was announced the week we did CreateCon, and I'm feeling warm and fuzzy and nostalgic.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is not a new thing by any means. It is definitely, I think, going to be heavier the first set of a new Standard year because it's the smallest card pool. You start to see a lot of new things that are taking us in a new direction, and it's basically inevitable. I'm sure at some point we're going to be wrong, but it's basically inevitable that not all of those new directions are going to land. And it's also probably intentional that all of those new directions are not going to land because some of those new directions, we know that they work at least a year out. What's the maximum distance they work out? Because they have different design teams. I forget now. It's been a while since I've looked into the behind the scenes of developing Hearthstone sets.
I think initial is 4 sets ahead. So that's like a year and a third. I remember them recently tweeting they were just wrapping up submission on the second set of next year.
Okay. So whatever the case is, still they're working on multiple sets ahead of time. So there is that thought. So it makes sense, and we've seen it. It's been proven across multiple sets that certain things, they get more tools along the way. And even if they were like right now, like say Elemental Shaman, it is technically successful within the first expansion of this new standard year. I would bet we're going to still see a little bit of Elemental Shaman pieces in the next set or two. So that's kind of just where it comes from. And so when you ask if we have any ideas on how to fix issues like this, I would say I don't see it as an issue. You did also ask, or is this just a widely accepted style of content? I definitely go with the latter of your question there. I think this is intentional, and I certainly accept it. I don't see it as an issue. It's not something I look at as a negative. If it ever does come off as one, it's probably just because I was really excited for something during the preview season, and then when that potential new archetype wasn't ladder viable, I'm just kind of shoot. Well, I was looking forward to playing that, but it's not getting the wins. Kind of like the conversation we just had with me really wanting Canon Master Secret Paladin to be a thing. But it's not that I think overall splitting up archetypal toolkits across entire years is a bad thing. I don't think that's bad at all. I think that's just how you design card games with multiple sets.
And so I'm going to list 6 cards. Sword Eater, Stage Dive, Bumper Car, Tent Trasher, ETC God of Metal, and Ringmaster Huatley. Those cards are all part of Rush Warrior, yeah?
Yes.
All 6 of those cards are in Madness of the Dark Moon Fair, the last set for last year. So, you can kind of see how they seed these things in previous years. But the dream here is something that's only happened really a couple times I can think of. Whispers and Ngoro specifically. The dream here is that the first rotation takes away half of every deck, and then the first set gives you new halves, and you build new decks. It doesn't usually happen that way, but that's the dream. But what we've had instead lately, there have been a few years recently, in particular, Angora was actually pretty powerful in retrospect, but then Witchwood, it gave us Odd and Even, and that kind of eclipsed a lot of stuff for a while. Ashes of Outland ended up being not too crazy in terms of stuff that held over a year because they rotated out Demon Hunter Initiate, but Demon Hunter was obviously a big deal when Ashes came out. And now that Barons has come out, we have like half decks from the last meta that have been updated and revised, and half new decks. But it's the feeling of last year's stuff, when it goes away, is going to leave a big hole for this year's stuff to finally be good enough, only happens when they really actively change the power level of the game. And they had to reel it in this year. Because Year of the Dragon was really something. And I just thought about the other day. Remember how we used to play Rogue Galakron for 4, and we would hit Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, and we would just play 7 free cards that turn, including at least 3 dragons, and it was just completely filthy disgusting?
Are you feeling guilty?
No. No.
You should.
I'd do it again. No. I would do it again. I enjoyed it when I did it, but I'm glad that's not in standard anymore. But that means when you're doing that kind of active depowering, that you're going to hear more of this kind of conversation. And a lot of Barons cards are seeing play because it's a small meta with the core set stuff going on, and there just aren't as many options right now. But the dream is to set it up so that every rotation, it takes away a lot of support pieces and gives you a new one, and so the decks feel different. Seen some of that. Not a ton of that this rotation, at least. And I'm hopeful that the next one is the fruition of their new design philosophy, because we're seeing really major shifts from year to year, and that makes each year feel kind of pretty distinct when the rotation happens of last year's stuff, this year's stuff. And there are ways around that, but it's very difficult to get it right. And if you overshoot the first set and all of your new stuff works right away, then the entire previous year doesn't work, and your next year's expansions are either obviously in the shadow of this stuff, and we're sick of it after a year, or it has to get more and more powerful, which is the term power creep, which we want to avoid.
I really don't have anything to add. I agree. I like your breakdown. I stand by mine.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Floaty Potatoes. Hachikumo wrote in and says, wants to know if we can ask Team 5 if they can allow Whizbang to at least work in casual mode. Oh, and also
Hey, Team
asked,
5, can you allow Whizbang to at least work in casual mode? Thanks.
I still I'm with everyone that wants Whizbang just to get added back to standard. I get it. I'd like to see it. I know they're selling decks now, but still, come on, it's fine. Whizbang doesn't have to have perfect decks.
It's that being an option, I think, makes the game a better game.
Agree.
Even if you say like you have X Whizbang uses per time period or whatever, just let people Whizbang it. By the way, fun fact: the sound that I played earlier this episode. If you get a Whizbang the Wonderful in your hand and play him, that is his battle cry sound.
Oh.
But it is very difficult to do because you can't add him to a deck because it gives you a deck. You have to generate him. But if you generate a Whizbang and you play it, that's what you hear.
I learned something today. Sounded vaguely legendary. Hajikuma also said, and also asked Team 5 to tell us whether the Battle Ready deck and deck recipes will ever include cards from the mini set. I've never thought of this, but it also probably goes to show how many times I've used deck recipes and I have not bought a Battle Ready deck.
So I don't know about the deck recipes. The Battle Ready decks included cards from the last mini set, so I'm going to assume that's fair game, because they included Crab Riders, which was in Dark Moon Races, among other cards.
Yeah, I'm surprised there's not any deck recipes running mini set, because I think it would be a good advertisement and a good way to like click on the card and it's to direct you to the store to buy the mini set, or I guess it would just direct you to craft it because you can do that, but they should just, why not also direct you to be like, hey, this is part of a mini set. You can get a ton of cards instead of Burn and Dust. Why not? Take a look. Maybe you'd like it.
So I don't know when Battle Ready decks are coming back. I don't know how successful they were. I would guess they were successful, but we don't know for sure. But I also don't know how their CS dealt with some of the cards in the Battle Ready decks getting nerfed, how that went down.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Yeah, Battle Ready, that's a weird one. Like usually we hear from folks and I get kind of a good gauge from listener feedback. But I really haven't heard anyone talking about Battle Ready decks. It's the kind of thing that to me would have made all the sense in the world when Hearthstone was a new game, and I probably would have taken advantage of it when I was just getting into it. But having played since beta, it's like I am not the target demo.
And also, I think that if a year-old Hearthstone, they just said, all right, come buy your mid-range combo druid and just put that into every player's collection, that would have made the game less interesting. It's different now with the amount of data out there and the pace of iteration. I expect we'll see Battle Ready decks again. They were really, really amazing for alts. They were so good for alt accounts on EU or Asia or whatever, because it would automatically unlock the full core set as well. That was worth the money.
That's another thing I didn't think of. I only use my alt accounts to go play Battlegrounds when I'm losing a lot on my main account.
Yes, I use I have my main account. My EU account is for Drunk Hat. He plays Battlegrounds over there.
Drinking Battlegrounds.
Yes. It's in a tavern. What are you supposed to do?
There's a lot of everything in Hearthstone is taking place in a bar. There's not nearly enough alcoholic references in this game.
No. Well, I mean, Grim Patron was the first one that they really did, and that didn't turn out too well. So
I would argue it depends who you ask.
it would.
It definitely would. Please send in your harsh defenses of Patron Warrior to Ridiculous Hat's email.
It's all going to be back in my day. Does anyone who played Patron Warrior even know how to use email? They're going to send me a carrier pigeon. That was, 6 years ago? It was so old, so long ago.
You make it sound like we were claiming free AOL minutes off a disc still.
There are a lot of people still out there that use their AOL.com email addresses. Trust me, a lot of people still out there.
Where was I? I think it was I stopped at a Wendy's the other day. The Wendy's contact email is a Yahoo address.
I don't think that's how that's supposed to work.
I think it was straight up Wendy's at yahoo.com. It was like on the drive-through window, like have a comment, questions, and it was at a Yahoo. Anyone listening work at Wendy's, can you verify this? Because Katie and I were dying laughing while we waited for our spicy chicken nuggies so that we could get a road trip going. So
I work at a different company. We don't make burgers, but large company. Each store has a unit number, and then it's that unit number at businessname.com. And so, I think it would be 1234 at Wendy's.com.
I would too, or dip your fries in a Frosty at Wendy's.com, something of that nature, right? And chat room, listen, if you still use Yahoo email, you do you. That's fine. This is a major corporation. Which is why it seemed very strange to me. Anyways, if anyone out there works at a Wendy's and can explain what the hell I saw and why, I'm so fascinated now. Anyways, we've got a battleground question, Hat.
Got a battlegrounds question. So, King Dupless asks, Menagerie boars seem to be overperforming still, even after the flat test nerf based on HS replay. It's still too easy to get blood gems. How would you go about bringing them down just a bit to more line up with other tribes? I was thinking maybe lower Tough Tusk and Thorn Call it at 3-3 to hit their tempo a bit early on. Maybe Agam Thorn Curse with a slightly lower starting stats, maybe a 3-4. Either a limit of how many times it can proc per turn, or changing it so it's, say, after a blood gem, maybe 3 random friendly minions, kind of like a Menagerie Mug or Jug. Thoughts? Ideas? Garrett, you've been playing more BGs than me lately. What's your vibe after the flat test nerf? Are Menagerie boars still too good?
They are good, without a doubt. But their average performance is very, very close with pirates. And dragons still have ridiculously higher first place finish on average. I think Flat Tusk is fine, and I that's where I get kind of hung up on Dupless's message here, saying, Flat Tusk still seems good even post nerf. Flat Tusk is a tier 6 minion. So I feel like if we're gonna target Flat Tusk, it's the dragons are too good when they find Caligos, is I think as equal a concern, which is also a 6-star minion. So I don't know if I agree with that one as much. It sure seems to me like mid game blood gem generation is just not what it used to be. I believe part of that is meta knowledge to get those tier 4 gem producing minions. It's other people are going for it, and we're all drafting from the same pool. It's gonna get harder and harder to find them, but at the same time, you don't have boars in every single darn lobby anymore. So it's a little. I wonder if some of that is creeping into my thought. But my thought right now is that boars just aren't that bad. Now, Dupless is really focusing on Menagerie, and I don't know. I think Battlegrounds is in a good place overall. I'm pretty happy with the state of things. Menagerie is such a wide swath. It's such a you can build so many different Menagerie boards. If you were already going Menagerie and you found an early Flat Tusk, yeah, that's gonna be good, but you really kind of need the full gamut. You need Thorn Curse with Flat Tusk with Agamagan, and that's so specific. That's 2 5-stars and 1 6-star minion, and it really pops off once you also find your amalgams, which is even more tier 6. So I think the perfect Menagerie board that you really, really don't want to stare down is acceptably difficult to assemble.
And the question of what qualifies as too good is a big question. I am looking at the stats here. It does look like Menagerie is the bucket that they dump all the other classifications into. Look at the popularity graph on HS Replay and compositions. We're looking at top 20% last 7 days, which does include about a day and a half of pre-patch gameplay, which will fade off in the next couple days. There's the most popular compositions. Elementals 9.7%, Dragons 9.6%, Mechs 9.3%, Menagerie 35.9%. This is the other bucket. There's a lot going on here. However, a lot of these compositions end up with Agam and Flat Tusk. It's a very good combo. It's a very powerful pair of minions. I'm looking at, if you click into a composition, you can actually look at perfect Menagerie games where you can see players that did not lose a single round. The top one is, of course, Flat Tusk Agam. Number 2 does not have either. It has a very large Mithrax and a golden Lightfang. The next one has, it has Big Pig and Agam and Flat Tusk, so on and so forth. Most of these are Agam Flat Tusk builds. Not all of them, most of them. If you have a build that's this popular and it's still doing this well, there's probably some opportunity for a nudge here. But also the nudges that I would want to make, if I were the BG's designer and they have a very difficult job, I don't know, I cannot imagine what it's like to design BGs and balance them because there's so many moving pieces, is to make the other stuff better. Not to make this worse, make the other stuff better. Because Quillboars are actually the worst tribe in the game right now if you go solo Quillboar. They're actually the worst option. Outside of Taunt Comp, which is not a real thing. We all tried. We all moved on. There's no such real thing as Taunt Comp. But Quillboars are at a 4.49 average placement. They very rarely get first place. Mechs are kind of a little better as a top 4 tribe, but they almost never get first. Murlocs get first more often, but they drop off pretty hard. Demons, again, another top 4, but never first comp. Elementals, much more likely to get first, much like Dragons, and if you don't hit them, then you lose. And then we kind of work up from there, Beast, Pirates, Menagerie. The stuff at the bottom needs to help. We need competitive options to Menagerie because right now there's not really anything better to do than level and find some 6s and juice them up. We can do better. That's where I'd like to see some attention.
Yeah, I also think the stuff that is unpopular needs some help. Like Demons may not be at the bottom, but they're also at 3% popularity, and I think there's a reason for that. I'm looking at top 20% MMR right now, so it's 6.5K plus. If anyone's wondering what the hell filters I've got running. And also, the Demons' lowest average placement is first place. They get first place the least of all 8 potential finishes. Demons needs something, anything at all.
And Mechs are more popular, but have the same disparity here. First place is the least likely thing to get if you are in a Mechs comp.
Yeah. I do want to caution that a little bit by saying that there are certain heroes that make these lower win rate and lower popularity tribes really work. That's still one of the reasons that I think the last time Celissa was on, she was like, I would never play Cthulhu again. And I'm like, I'll still take Cthulhu every time because I can play Mechs and it works. It's a big reason I like Cthulhu. It's a big reason I like Ragnaros. And any other minion that helps me do my mech thing. And I do like that. And I don't think I would want... It's a difficult... This is hard for me to explain because I don't know what the perfect balance is. I don't have a statement that I can put out to you, dear listeners, saying this is how I want Battlegrounds to be, because I don't know what the balance is or should be, and I can't even really quantify what the balance currently is. But right now, we do have certain tribes that are kind of good and safe bets to try and draft regardless of the hero that you're playing, and then we have others that become much, much, much more potent depending on the hero that you're playing. And I like that, and I don't think I would want to lose that in Battlegrounds. At the same time, I would sure love to draft Mech more often and not feel like I just got unlucky and this is the best thing I could manage.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I never want to draft Demons on purpose.
No. It's like, you can kind of see it as something you'll pivot out of when you hit tier 4 or whatever. It can get you through the first 3 tiers. But that's not a comp. That's a pit stop.
But even then, I would rather do that with Taunt.
Yeah, Arm of the Empire is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very good card.
Yeah.
It's if you have Acolyte of Cthulhu and Arm of the Empire, you can go pretty fast up the levels.
Yes. And if you're George, you can hold on to your Acolyte, throw a Divine Shield on it, and then pivot into like whatever weird menagerie you want, because you got like one big minion with Divine Shield, and you can start just getting whatever good stuff you can find and shielding it. George is wildly good, and you even look on HS Replay, and it says I think last time I checked on George, HS Replay says number 1 is Taunt, but if you look at it, it's really just a big Acolyte and then a random assortment of whatever George happened to find. But
there's a champ. He's got an arm, a tormented ritualist, and a champion of Yasharash.
Okay, all right, fair. Okay, so the arm
That is
still
taunty.
there. The arm does not still need to be there. Let's be honest.
We're going by the stats. We don't make the personal decisions here.
I
we
would
let
not.
The numbers do the talking.
I would not have this board on purpose. I would not have that arm there by desire.
I would take the bubbly poisons.
I would definitely take the bubbly poisons. Yeah, George is wonderful. George is absolutely delightful. But again, this is like kind of a menagerie poison comp that happened to hold on to a champion of Yashiraj. So,
well, you get to bubble these early minions, and then you get to power level and just press your button, and then you get all this poison stuff, and then you win the lobby, so you don't have to sell things.
Yeah.
I don't know. Kind of works.
Yeah, but maybe now that you've mentioned how poorly Quillbore is doing post nerf, I bet that's a bit of limiting. Like there's Agam and Flat Tusk might be part of that limiting factor because they are Quillbore, and you can't buff them up to help Quillbore comp, because if you buff them up, then you're also doubling down on the menagerie problem.
I don't know. Those cards aren't really like Flat Tusk. You're kind of looking for everything. And Flat Tusk you're even looking for if you're not Quillbores, because it's one of the few 6-drops that's never a whiff. But I think you can probably nudge Agam and not really hurt the rest of the Quillbores and maybe move some of the power there. You're never playing Agam for long if you're in mono Quillbores. It just doesn't do enough.
That's fair. That's fair. But Flat Tusk is still.
Flat Tusk is the only 6-drop I can think of outside of maybe a Melgadon where you just are always happy to see it. Eliza's alright. But a lot of them are just total whiffs if you're in the wrong tribe, and Flat Tusk never really a whiff.
Yep. There's also the problem with Agamagan, who also works really well with Quillbore, but also helps Menagerie Flat Tusk boards go off.
It's all right. I mean, I don't even see him in most of the high level winning Menagerie comps. He's nice to have because he's a beast and he checks that box, but I don't think that I'd consider that part of the problem. It's the engine. He's just a symptom that makes the engine run a little smoother.
I'm just saying, if you made him stronger, the Flat Tusk Menagerie boards that find an Agam earlier, it's gonna just feel even worse when you run into them.
Oh sure, yeah, you can't do that.
But yeah, I don't. So we came to no hard declaration on this.
It's Battlegrounds is a very difficult mode to balance and design, and I do not envy the team that has to figure it out because it seems really, really complicated. But I think the declaration I would make is make the bad stuff right now better so that Menagerie is more competition as opposed to making Menagerie worse.
I agree with that. All right, let's take some personal questions that may or may not be about Hearthstone. Hat, shall we?
All right.
And also, chat room, if you want to drop some questions, I'll try and keep my eye on here and pull a few in that we can answer at the end of this. They can be about Hearthstone or not, because we're nearing the end of the show, so we can get a little off topic. Anyways, HollowPoint51 wrote in and said, "What Magic the Gathering card hooked you onto the game, and/or what's your favorite card?" As an on and off Magic player from around 7th edition, Vizardrix was the card that hooked me, essentially a War Golem, but Muldrifter is my true love. I really got in around Innistrad / Return to Ravnica, Garrett's supposed entry point. I believe that's correct. I think Innistrad was like just wrapping up it was basically Gatecrash as much as I can remember. Anyway, continues saying, also played Commanders, so my knowledge of cards is vast, even Ice Age and Alliances all the way back in 2014. Hat, referencing the 400th episode, says Hollow Point. Yeah, your knowledge is going to far, far, far exceed mine, Hollow Point. I played a lot for I basically played from Gatecrash to Cons of Tarkir. I did a sealed Grand Prix for Cons, and that was pretty much the end of Magic for me. I've dabbled since, but that's about it. As I started getting really into Hearthstone, and the show started exploding. But if I had to point to a card that got me very excited about Magic, because my very first event I went and played at a card store, I think it was a pre-release for Gatecrash. I cracked a Boros Reckoner, and I still think about that card. That card is dope.
Card's pretty cool.
Yeah. So in Magic, let me try and translate this into Hearthstone terms. So it's a 3-mana card. In Magic, you have different colored manas, and you could pay either red or white, whatever combination of that you wanted. You could pay 2 red, 1 white, or vice versa.
It's like a dual class card.
Yeah, think like that. Yeah. And then whenever that Boros Reckoner is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to a target creature or player. And then you could also pay an additional mana to give Boros Reckoner first strike until end of turn, which is not really a thing that exists in Hearthstone. I guess Divine Shield would be the closest thing we have to it, but with a condition.
It's first strike. I mean, it would make sense. You could put this into Hearthstone. First strike means what it sounds. When this attacks, it hits first. So, if I have a 3/1 first striker that hits a 3/3, it deals its 3 damage first. The other thing dies, and then your minion does not take damage.
But if it survives, then the minion would take damage.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. It just hits first. You could put this into Hearthstone.
I'm surprised they've never really messed around with a mechanic like this, because you're right, it could work in Hearthstone. I was just trying to think of anything in Hearthstone that was kind of like that, and the closest thing I could think of was Divine Shield. But it's not a perfect 1-to-1 by any means. But yeah, this card was just super cool. It was one of the first good cards I had. So yeah, this one really sticks out in my mind. And then when I was playing, just because I liked when I was also building a deck, just because I liked the theme of Orzhov, even though this card was very, I don't know, no one could agree on it. A lot of people think this card sucks. I really love it. I also loved Tessa, Envoy of Ghosts. It's another one that I cracked pretty early on. It was just a super cool card. Also, still to this day, one of my favorite Magic illustrations, because it's just so damn good. It's also done by Carla Ortiz, who I'm a raging fanboy of. So yeah, it's I love this card, even though it was questionable whether it was good or not. But I had a lot of fun with it, just playing 4 fun Orzhov decks.
Orzhov's a good color combination. I'm a fan.
Yes.
So when I look back at it, if I'm being honest now, my relationship with Magic over the years was kind of not a healthy one for a long, long time. It was, I played on the, I'm going to say near professional level, the aspiring professional level, maybe the grinder level, for pretty intensively for a lot of my teenage and early 20s something life, to the point where it became something that I looked at to define my self-esteem, and that wasn't a healthy thing. So it's very difficult for me to go back and play Magic and not kind of regress to that headspace, which isn't something that I enjoy doing. That's why I really like how Hearthstone has been different for me. I'll still play Empty Arena here and there, but I think that Hearthstone is a much better digital game and also way less expensive. We talked about that in episode 400, but boy, Hearthstone is it's got nothing on any iteration of Magic I've ever tried in terms of cost. However, I really, really enjoyed it and stuck with the game for a long time and played a lot of Magic for a lot of years. And if I look at the first card that really got me and helped me make that transition from casual player to FNM semi-competitive, it's Fires of Yavimaya. And that card came out in Invasion, I think. The year 2000. The
Oh, you're
year
going way
2000.
back.
I was in high school. It's
3 mana enchantment. Creatures you control have haste. Sacrifice fires of Maya. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn.
So you would go turn 1 Llanowar Elf, turn 2 Fires of Yavimaya, and then you'd start playing giant things and hitting your opponent with them. You'd have Blastoderms, which was a 4-mana 5/5, unheard of back in the day. It was considered so overpowered it actually just died after 3 turns. So by playing Fires, you got an extra attack with it. I had a janky build that with Sheevan Worms, which was a gating creature, which you had to return a minion back to your hand to play it, but it was a 7/7 trample, and you gave it haste, and it was big dumb red green things that hit you, and it was there were versions of it that were popular, and I was playing definitely a scuffed version, but I was having so much fun with it, and this was the card that inspired me to upgrade my deck and buy some sleeves and get some singles and get some cards here and cards there, and then I went to a pre-release, and then it was all over, and that was it. So yeah, that was where I remember just falling in, and I enjoyed my time with the game, but my relationship with it definitely wasn't healthy when I was younger, and so it's hard for me to go back.
I can understand and respect that. All right, you want to go back to
Thanks for
Hearthstone
the
for a
question,
minute?
Hollow Point.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Hollow
well,
Point.
we've got a question from Arinar?
I'm gonna go with Aranar.
Arinar. What is the best or your favorite art from all the new cards? You just told us about your favorite Magic art. Now you got to talk about your Hearthstone art. And by new cards, do you think they mean Wailing Caverns or all of Barrens or what?
I would say the standard year would suffice.
Okay.
That's how I'm going to interpret it.
So what stands out to you art-wise that you're like, wow, this year really, really got it?
My gut went Samuro. I really, really love the Samuro illustration.
Mm-hmm.
I like anything that looks kind of painterly and wet, like thick globs of paint. I like things that look more like oil paintings than like dry brush. As much as I love the Matt Dixon stuff, but Matt Dixon is very, very dry brush and a little starts to lean a little bit into the pastel type of stuff. I loved Matt Dixon stuff, but when I was in art school, nothing made me happier. Well, the getting up early part didn't make me happy, but if I had to get up early for life drawing or life painting, I was much happier when it was oil painting than any other medium. Which was mostly my final years of art college was like all oil. I just fell in love with it. And my God, now that I'm sitting here talking about it, I would love to get back to it. But yeah, it's you really you cake it on, it moves smoothly, and you end up with these. It literally still kind of looks wet, for lack of a better word, afterwards. So I love typically it's digital paintings. I want to say I've actually had the pleasure of meeting AJ Nazaro, who is the illustrator who did Samuro. And wonderful Instagram follow. He does a lot of traditional medium, but I believe he finishes all of his Hearthstone illustrations digitally. And so a lot of my favorite illustrations in Hearthstone, they kind of have that kind of wet, almost oil painty. You can also get that effect with like acrylics if you're working in traditional mediums, but that have that kind of look. They tend to be digital because digital is just gotten that damn good. And you can just translate those painting techniques over to a tablet not effortlessly, but you can do it. But also when I was going through, damn, do I love the illustration for More Dressed Fire Eye. That is a phenomenal illustration. It's so good.
So metal. That was my golden legendary. And in golden, he shreds. He shreds.
Yeah. It's just a good damn like character illustration. It's well done. It's a good composition. Mordresh himself is in a really good pose, and you've got wonderful. I'm a sucker for atmospheric perspective in the background. There's thorns back there, but it's super cloudy and misty, and it really looks like it's receding into the background. And if you're listening to this on audio, just Google Mordresh real quick and pick up on what I'm laying down.
It's a nice piece.
What about you?
Cheat a little bit.
Sorry, what was that?
Cheat.
You're gonna cheat.
I'm cheating. I'm gonna say the tier 2 Tavern regular hero portraits. I like them all. I think they're all really fun.
Tier 2 regular
The
hero
every
portraits.
200 level ones.
Oh, there's no easy way for me to pull this up that I know of.
Tavern regular hero portraits. I'm just gonna type this in here. I don't know. Here, use this link.
Oh,
Use
there we
that
go. Well, yeah, I'll click on that. You're lucky it's just us. If Joss was here, I have chat closed to make you bigger for grabbing for the overlay. Where's the? These are all max. What's going on here? This isn't from the current season.
There's kind of like an overlay at the top. I don't know. I like a lot of what they've done with the cosmetic gifts of the portraits, and the coins are really fun. Cat coin, best coin. But there's a lot of like really the callbacks to classic WoW armor are really cool here, and I had a difficult choice deciding which of these to go with. Some of these are more traditional, and then some of them are weird. And part of that is the artistic choices I guess they made with the art back then. But like, look at the tier 2 Rexar. Rexar is super weird. Look at that. Look at that.
Oh yeah, that dragon set. I want to say that was vanilla.
It's tier 2. It's
Oh, it is. Oh, they're all tier 2. It's literally.
They're all tier 2 except for Valera, who's tier 5 because her book of hero skin was tier 2.
Oh, and then also Illidan, who Demon Hunter wasn't a thing. So.
Yeah, and all the original reward tracks, the reward track portraits, those are all tier 1s.
I didn't pick up on
They're
any
WoW
of this.
classic armor sets.
I didn't pick up on any.
They're all
of
WoW
this.
classic armor sets.
I guess some of them I'm not nearly as like Jaina's. Like I don't recognize that at all. Now that I'm like really thinking about it, I recognize it, but it wasn't until you said it was tier 2. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess so. But yeah,
they're all pretty
the
badass.
Wearing freaking Judgment. Yeah, geez. Okay.
Yeah, they're all pretty badass and cool and hard choices. And I feel like now I have too many good mage portraits, and that's a great problem to have because 1001 Jaina is awesome. Kultiran Jaina is gorgeous, so great. That was my favorite portrait from that rewards track, and I have her equipped still. I really like the direction they've gone with the hero portraits and how they're overflowing with them. There are so many choices, and that each person you queue into feels like they have a unique combination of portrait and card back and coin, and that you can really personalize Hearthstone.
Well,
in a really,
it was
effective way.
such a drought for basically the entire existence of Hearthstone until the reward track came in. We barely had hero portraits. We had no coins. We just had the card.
Didn't have diamond cards. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
there's diamond cards. Which, by the way, Brucon. Now that I have him, I feel like I owe him an apology. That diamond animation is sick.
They're a lot better when you see them animated than
Yeah.
I thought they would be. They don't really translate all that well to website articles or whatever. Diamond Ragnaros obviously looks badass. But you have to play Classic to have Diamond Ragnaros, and I don't play... The Classic decks that I play have Sap and Eviscerate in them. They do not have Ragnaros in them, so I haven't seen him in action personally. My opponents haven't made it to turn 8, so...
Fair. But yeah, well, rad. Thank you for joining in the art chat there, Hat. Stevensville Gamers in Twitch chat asks, what game franchise do you think could rival Hearthstone on the digital card game space if they made one? If they made one.
Are they asking us to be in touch with what the young people are doing? Because I have no idea. Like what, Fortnite cards?
I mean, yeah, Epic seems to have enough money to just throw at problems. Personally, I would love to see a GTA take on a card game. I find the crassness and just intentionally offensive writing of GTA funny when I put my like 18-year-old Garrett hat on. And I think a card game full of that would be extremely amusing and sophomoric.
I could see them do, honestly, Assassin's Creed. I bet there's probably enough depth for an Assassin's Creed card game.
I think,
Ubi would do that.
Yeah, they would.
I was about to say they could do a Witcher card game, but then I realized, oh wait, they did that. Gwent in Witcher 3, awesome. I did enjoy Beta Gwent a lot. didn't turn out to be the game that I wanted to play.
Wasn't
But
it
yeah,
just like a
Assassin's
month
Creed,
ago
I think.
I was talking smack about Gwent and you were defending it?
I liked Gwent in beta a lot, and then they kept changing core rules, and then they abandoned the game for 6 months while they made a new Gwent that was much worse.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
Yeah, I struggle to think of something that would be on Hearthstone's level. I think an Assassin's Creed card game would be successful. I don't think it would reach Hearthstone heights, but I think you would have a successful audience. Like Assassin's Creed is a frequently a franchise I forget about, like how
Yeah.
passionate its fan base is. And I used to be part of it. I actually really got grumpy once they changed the controls. I know a lot of people didn't like the old Assassin's Creed controls, but I loved it. So I don't really care for the newer ones, but I played every single damn one of the original stint between 1 and Black Flag.
The real question I have, actually, is Hearthstone the last big successful digital card game? Because it's really, really hard to break into this genre now. And there are a lot of subgenres and various isotopes, like auto battlers are not quite card games, but they're pretty similar to card games. But I don't know how much of an audience there is for new card games. And I wonder if any new game will be as popular as Hearthstone was on its release, if there's that much hunger for them, or if people are just going towards other genres these days. I don't know.
I think right now it would be hard. I also think it's hard
Yeah.
for me to say there'll never be another big one because time marches on. Eventually,
Yeah.
there'll be a hunger for it. But right now, it's kind of an embarrassment of riches in terms of quality digital card games. Because
And also, the popularity isn't really there for any except Hearthstone. Like, you can find there's some in like Duel Links and some in Pokemon stuff, but from the purely digital front, I play actually a good bit of Legends of Runeterra these days. I play the Lab of Legends mode almost every day. It's a single player roguelike which scratches every itch I have. Like that is a checklist of words that I like. Um, and the player base is pretty small, even though the game is incredibly generous, and even though it's very polished. And I wonder if you have a company like Riot with an established franchise like League of Legends behind a game that's that generous and that well done, and it still just didn't really click with a lot of players. How much of an audience is there out there?
I mean, when it looks like even Hearthstone is getting away from card games in its next major release or next major addition to its client, yeah, it sure seems like maybe we're at a saturation point at the moment. But yeah, I want to see GTA card game now.
I can see it.
I want to see it. Give me that. Oh, Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves could do it. That's the other one. I was trying to think. I was like, there's something in the back of my mind that's on my mind from E3. What the
Joss
hell is
was
it?
screaming at the radio.
Sea of Thieves. It already has a card game like art, like a whimsical card game ass art style. Yes, that should have been my first answer.
Also, Mega Crit, do you hear me? Competitive Slay the Spire. Head-to-head Slay the Spire. Do it. Put it out in the world. I still play that game every day as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for your questions. I think this is gonna bring us to the end here. We took some emails. We took some Discord questions. We even talked to the chat room. We did it all, Hat.
We did all. Thanks,
did.
chat.
Thanks, chat. Thanks
And
for hanging out.
Patrons. Yeah.
And patrons.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Yes. Speaking of patrons, if you want to become one, you want to support the show, $1 or more, you decide. Head on over to patreon.com/TAC. Get yourself an ad-free version of the show. You'll also get access to our Discord and some other perks. So go check it out. We really appreciate it. And speaking of our patrons, we want to thank our producers, Declan H., Cheesy Bob, and Jeffrey D. If you want to become a producer yourself, well, go check out the Patreon. If you want to check out the back catalog of Angry Chicken episodes, maybe you want to go find that episode I just referenced. I don't remember which episode it was, where I was getting down on Gwent a little bit and Hat was defending it. You can go to theangrychicken.com. Every single episode of The Angry Chicken can be found on there. You can find Joss's other work over on, just go follow her Twitter at Joss Plays. Does all sorts of stuff. Go check that out. Tell her we said hi, and we'll see you next week. But before we leave, Hat, where can everyone find you?
Best place to go is the hub of my content because I don't have a website. Sorry, Garrett. Is twitter.com/ridiculoushat, where you can find all of my other podcasts, including Coin Conceit over at coinconceit.com and Vicious Syndicate over at vicioussyndicate.com.
You can find me on Twitter at Garrett Art, and this podcast and every single other one that I produce over at amove.tv. I would recommend you go and listen to Into the Nexus, my podcast about Heroes of the Storm, because there was another patch last week, which I think ties it with... No, it can't be tied with Hearthstone updates this year. Can it? How many Hearthstone updates have we had this year?
Yes.
I'm gonna say I think this puts it in second place for the most updated Blizzard game of 2021.
Yeah, this year for Hearthstone updates, I think we've had are you including balance updates?
Yeah, there's no way.
Double digits.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But there was a sizable balance patch in Here's the Storm last week. We broke it all down on the most recent episode. So if you go look up Into the Nexus, wherever you get your podcast right now, that's the most recent episode. Go give it a listen. But anyways, thank you again for listening, everybody. That's going to do it for me, for Hat. And until next time, job's done.
Job's done.